I assume, rest of the world, watched this weekend as our country was in one of the most interesting states it has ever been in its existence. You know, the murder of George Floyd and his passing away last week prompted an entire country to say, hey, you know what? This is going to be the time where we take a stand. There had been protests and injustices before that have all led to this moment, but it felt like the George Floyd murder was one that had the entire country ready for real change in the United States of America. It wasn't just regional. It wasn't just a city. It felt like it was the entire country with everybody representing from every single ethnicity, age group, everything like that, saying, hey, listen, this is not what our country is about. Peaceful protests were happening. A lot of people were showing up on the streets, marching, chanting in unison. And I felt like this was potentially the turning point in America to come together and rally and be on the same side of this particular issue. There's always been tone-deaf people who make excuses for things. Well, I want to see the entire video. What did he do? There's always these things happen. And sometimes, by the way, those people, by seeing the entire video and getting a different story, they feel as if they were right all along. But the George Floyd murder that was captured for 8 minutes and 46 or 41 seconds, whatever it was, I think even got the tone-deaf people who didn't realize about potential police brutality and injustices, even though it's been shoved in their face here the last couple of years with the emergence of social media and stuff like that. I think George Floyd was the turning point for a lot of people who said, okay, that can't happen in the country that we're from. That happened that time. That's happened before. We are now going to become a country that stands for everything that we wanted to stand for whenever we were originally founded. Freedom for everybody, opportunity for everybody, equality. Everybody was on the same side, and that's why the protest from one side of our nation to the other, even into Europe and other cities, people were protesting about it. Then the narrative got changed. Then the narrative got changed by these rioters and destroyers that were preying on an opportunity and seizing this to become a time where they could just come in and turn cities into shambles. And then all those tone-deaf people that were starting to come around and say, yeah, you know what happened to George Floyd, we can't ever let happen again. And although I didn't listen whenever Colin Kaepernick took a knee, and I didn't listen whenever the things went down in Baltimore and in Ferguson and things of that, but whenever you watch the George Floyd thing happen, they were finally like, okay, let's do it. Protests happen. Let's go. Here we go. We're rolling. And then all of a sudden, this protest gets linked to the destruction of cities from one side of our country to the other. Indianapolis was no exception. Our entire downtown was on fire at certain times. Every single window got broke. Every single store that we had basically got looted. And that was initially started as a beautiful protest that brought out a lot of people. We had faith ministers out there. People that practice all types of religion were out there. We had every single age group out there protesting. And then when the night fell, the protest was used as an opportunity by people who I don't think were from Indianapolis, that did not care about what happened to George Floyd. They were simply there to spark violence and to do something terrible. And the only reason why I know that is because I was watching a Facebook live stream from a man named Christopher White. He was inside of it, and you could see the protesters who were passionate. And really what we were all thinking, they were chanting and singing. Now, granted, there were some expletives, and they were definitely saying some things I would assume that you're not going to enjoy hearing if you're a cop or a cop's family, but there was no violence. They were just protesting. They were enabling their right to do so. And then you turn the corner and you got these guys in ski masks. You got these white dudes with skateboards and baseball bats just popping out windows, bang, bang, boom, and then just leaving. Not even a part of the chanting, not even part of anything. They just used it as an opportunity to kind of lose their minds. And in my eyes, I think we have to remember to keep the protesters in the mission, in the statement, the main focus here, okay? Like, I think we're at a point where all of America is like, yep, this is the side we're on. Now, granted, there's always going to be holes of the ass that are going to be on the other side. There's always going to be a couple of them. I mean, damn it, we all know them. But I feel like as a whole, we are all on that mission side. I feel like George Floyd was really the tipping point for a lot of people. But we have to keep that mission separate from the anarchy that was happening, because if we tie those two together, we're never going to be able to keep people on the same side as, hey, we're with them. Just because the mission in the statement was getting muddied by the people that chose to act like asses. So I want to say this. I want to thank everybody that went out there peacefully protested. We are 100% on your side in this particular office. I had a chance to be in a locker room with a lot of guys, listen to a lot of stories and hear a lot of things. And whenever you learn about that type of stuff, it really opens your eyes a little bit more and go like, oh, damn, I did not know that was happening. And now with the emergence of social media and body cameras and everybody, we've all kind of seen it. Now it's our time to kind of enact on it. Mobilize. Killer Mike's speech was amazing. If you haven't heard it, I would recommend you listen to it a couple times down in Atlanta, where he basically said, hey, listen, now is the time. If you don't like the way something's going, we beat them up at the ballot box. If you don't like the way something's going, now is the time for us to enact real change, because I feel like the narrative of the entire country is, hey, let's do this now. 2020 has been, an absolute cluster. Just an absolute miserable mess 2020 has been. But I think the one silver lining in this entire thing is with George Floyd, and I know this should have happened sooner, I'd assume a lot of people are thinking, and it didn't. That's just the way the world is. But with the George Floyd situation, it feels like this is the most our world has actually come together around something. And for that, I am thankful, and we can't let the rioters and the destroyers distract us from the fact that we are all on the same side of this thing whenever it comes to the murder of George Floyd by Dave Chauvin. And there's other 3 cops too, by the way, that just sat around and watched that whole thing happen for 8 minutes, 41 seconds. I'd assume that their days are potentially coming, but I feel like we got to remember that we're all on the same side of this thing, and I, for one, am very grateful. We'll be talking to a man that is on the same side as us in this entire thing in about 54 minutes. J.R. Smith, who was caught on camera beating up one of the rioters or destroyers in his neighborhood because the rioter broke the glass out of his truck, I believe. I don't know if it's a Ford truck, what type of truck. I assume it's a very nice truck. He played in the NBA forever. He has like $100 million net worth or whatever. JR beat up his truck. He chased him down, caught him. You saw it on film. Beat the hell out of that guy. Beat the living hell out of that scrawny, whiny, little, anarchy-looking, just beat the hell out of him. Respect his privacy. We will ask him who the respect your privacy guy is. We also talk about him not getting full hip into the kick. And when we will talk about the lack of explosion through the hip onto that kick there, JR. But I can't wait to talk to him. He did something I think that a lot of people were like, hey, those people are not for the good of all of us. They are not for the good of the social injustice. They are not good for the lack of equality. Those people are there with their own agenda, their own narrative. Because if you're allegedly there to protest for equality for all people in America, if you're there to protest against police injustice against the African American, then you go out and let's say you break the glass, you're a white person, and you break the glass of a black-owned business, and then you start a fire inside of it, and then you go and break the truck of a black-owned or from an African-American man. Are you not just completely battling against yourself at this point? Is that not exactly what you're doing? J.R. Smith caught the guy, beat him up, and said, get the out of here. And I'll tell you what, I think that is a narrative that I think everybody was feeling from the protest this weekend. It was like, hey, let's make sure we feel like we're at a point where we can go here. We feel like we can make some real change. This isn't always something that can happen. It doesn't feel as if it has in the past where some people are still against it, or some people, it feels like this is a time where everybody's like, yeah, you know what? We've all been through enough, have we not? We've been locked down in our houses. We got this coronavirus that's come out of nowhere. Now this cop wants to kneel on the back of this guy for 9 months. It felt like the people who didn't normally have compassion for things of this nature finally had compassion for it, because we're all kind of realizing that we're all living in the same world, same time. We have to be better for each other. And then all of a sudden, all this stuff starts happening. It distracts the messaging, and now we're back to square one.